of the skills pilots are most proud of is being able to fly precisely. And with VOR navigation, you can fly on a very precise course indeed to any VOR station, many of which are located on airports. But before you start out on that precise course, it's always a good idea to know exactly where you are now. So let's tune in the Julian VOR. I'll tune in the frequency of 114.0 and identify the station. That's to make sure that it's on the air and I didn't misdial the frequency. Then I'll turn the OBS knob to center the needle with a from indication. Now be careful that you don't turn the knob too fast, or it'll seem like the needle has a mind of its own. Now the needle centers with the OBS on 235, so I'm on the Julian 235-degree radial. That means I'm southwest of the station. Now that I know where I am, I'll turn the OBS and center the needle with a 2 indication, so I can fly toward the station. As you know, to have the needle indications make sense, the OBS setting has to agree with the direction you're flying. So I'll turn to a heading of 055. That matches the OBS. Right is clear. Now I've been flying along while I've been talking, so I've flown a little bit past that radial, and the needle is deflected a little bit to the right, showing me a little left of my intended course. So I'll correct to the right, toward the needle, about 10 degrees. And I'll exercise a little patience by holding this heading for a minute or two, and seeing what the needle is doing. Now, since the needle has not started to move to come back to center, I'll correct another 10 degrees to the right. This probably means I have a bit of a crosswind and need to crab more to get on the radial. Now, if I saw the needle was actually moving further away, I'd crab maybe 20 or 30 degrees instead. Now, resist the temptation to turn the OBS to center the needle. That could end up leading you in a big curving path around the station, and it's certainly not very precise navigation. Once I have the needle centered, I'll turn back to track the radial into Julian. Now, if there were no crosswind, I'd turn back to a heading of 055 degrees. But since it looks like there's a crosswind, I'll modify that heading to point my nose into the wind a little bit. How much into the wind? Well, the amount of crab needed depends on the wind speed and direction. So it's pretty much trial and error to see how much crab it takes to hold your course. Of course, it helps to know the winds aloft in your area. Let's try about a 10-degree crab to the right. That gives me a heading of 065 degrees. Now comes the fun part, seeing how quickly you can detect needle movements and make small corrections to center it again. But remember to keep a sharp lookout for other traffic while you're doing this. Here the needle has started to move to the left, so I'll turn 5 degrees to the left toward the needle and hold that heading. The trick is to use small corrections, but make them as soon as you see the needle moving. Don't wait until you have a big deflection. That means a big correction and lots of work to get back on course. Now, how often do you need to check the indicator needle to stay on course? Well, you'll find that distance from the VOR station will have a lot to do with it. As you already know, your VOR tells you your angle off course, not your distance off course. So as you get closer to the VOR, you'll get more needle deflection and more rapid needle movement for the same amount of distance off course. As you become more experienced, you'll develop a feel for how fast the needle is moving, and you'll automatically step up your scan to include it when you need to. Now, I've been tracking this radial pretty well, if I do say so myself, but notice all of a sudden the needle is moving all the way to the left. Well, what's happening is I'm getting pretty close to the station, so just a little bit of deviation in my course shows up as a large needle movement. I don't want to chase the needle here, because if I do, I'll end up making myself sick. As you can see now, the needle is all the way over to the left side, and now it's moving back the other way, clear to the right side. And the flag went from off, and now it shows a from. And we have station passage. But I don't need the needle to tell me that. I can see the VOR right down here. Now that I've passed over the VOR, let's use Victor 458 to fly to the Oceanside VOR. Now to do that, I'll turn the OBS to a setting of 263 degrees, because that's the radial that defines the airway I want to fly. And again, I'll turn to a heading that matches my OBS, 263 degrees in this case, so the needle will give me proper indications as I fly away from the Julian VOR. Left is clear. Now the needle shows all the way to the left, and the to from flag shows from. With the needle all the way to the left and a heading of 263 degrees, it would be a long time before I got on that radial. So I need to turn to a heading to intercept it. Now the further you are from the station, the bigger the intercept angle you'll need. Sometimes you might even use a 90-degree intercept angle. But because we're pretty close to the station here, I'll start out with a 45-degree intercept angle. And to help me, I'll use the 45-degree mark here on my heading indicator. A heading of, about 220 degrees should do it. Left is clear. Now I'll hold this heading until the needle starts to move. As soon as the needle starts moving, you want to start reducing your intercept angle. And the faster the needle's moving, the quicker you need to reduce that angle. Now that the needle is centering, I'll turn back to the original heading, 263 degrees, and start to track the radial as before. Right's clear. And I'll keep an eye out for the effect of any crosswind. And that's all there is to it. A little patience, a few small but immediate corrections, and you'll be precisely flying those highways in the sky to destinations all over the country.